Hey, if you're a parent, especially of a teenager or even a college student, then you know that one of the toughest things is to get them to understand how to view money, especially how you view money, how to earn it, how to manage it, and yes, especially how to spend it. If you've struggled, and I mean struggled, to get them to pay attention or to just plain get it, then watch this video. I had the same issues until one single 15-minute presentation I gave to my family. Believe me, it completely changed their perspective and left my wife thinking I was some kind of financial wizard, which I am. Let's go. All right, before I tell you exactly what I told my kids that had an incredible result, let's do a quick PSA, public service announcement here. Actually, you know what? I might go a little B-Rabbit, little Eminem, lose yourself. Boom, 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 boom. All right, sorry. I just went off the track there. So if you're thinking about dropping a comment here, here's why I'm talking about this. If you're going to drop a comment, let me steal your thunder. If you're before you do your shallow verbal beatdown on me, someone out there will likely want to drop some sort of comment about this video and say, hey, that won't work with all kids. Well, all right, great. Thanks, guy or girl. But don't waste your time. That's not a newsflash to any of us. If you think there's anything out there, anywhere that works for all kids all the time, then you're not a parent. I'm not a perfect parent. I thought I could be. I tried really hard to be one, but kids, they kind of have a way of moving the goalpost, right? And if you're a parent, then you know exactly what I mean. So this is not a sure thing. And if you're a parent or even a grandparent, then you know that nothing out there is when it comes to kids. Even what I'm about to show you wasn't the only conversation I had with my kids. It had to be tweaked every now and then. But I can assure you, it changed the entire way they looked at money from that point on. Now, you know what would be really helpful is after you listen to this, if you also had a great strategy that you'd be willing to share, please drop that idea in our comment. So all of our followers can benefit from that. Okay, here's the quick backstory. And I would wager that many of you listening have been or will be in this situation with your kids. This moment in time for me was when my kids were about 14 and 15. It would help you to know that in my house, I'm the financial parent and my wife is the healthcare parent. So we kind of divide and conquer most of the time. But I was reaching kind of a tipping point, or I should say a breaking point, really, where we had this Amazon account, right, which all four of us could access. My son was gaming. My daughter had her stuff that daughters do. They were both active in sports, school stuff, friend stuff, travel teams, you name it. And every day, I'm serious about that, every day I would get pecked, get one request here and several requests there. Usually in a text while I was working or late at night when I was falling asleep on the couch, like all men do in their 40s and 50s, right? And if I was awake, they were asking me permission to buy something. If I was asleep, they were taking horribly compromising pictures of me, then using those to try to bribe me the next day, right? Nice. I love kids. But to be fair to them, at least, these weren't huge and outrageous requests, really just nickel and dime items. A new lacrosse stick, a hoodie, a new game, a subscription to something. But I just told my wife, I'm going to pop. I just told her, I just don't really think that they really understand the value of money. And then it hit me. How could they ever understand? They have no way to really relate the difference between a $15 purchase or a $45 item. They had no concept of what a yearly subscription meant, especially since these apps and entertainment providers love to bundle up these things in $10 a month little packages. But they add up, right? And they definitely were not adding all of these asks up into one giant number. But I was aware of it, or at least I thought I was. More on that in a minute. I had to figure out a way to transfer what I knew to them. And so here's what I did. Since we ran the vast majority of our expenses through one or two credit cards, I took a Saturday morning and I used the technology on those credit card sites to analyze the last 6 to 12 months of expenses. And spoiler alert, this part threw me into kind of a depression and a bit of a panic. But within a short time, I had really good handle on what we spent on the kids. Blew my mind. But now, how do I show them this? And how do I get them to really attach a value to it? And then it hit me. I'm going to pay these kids a salary. Don't dismiss me yet. Hear me out. Let me show you what I mean. I won't use my actual numbers here because it really won't matter to you. You have your own numbers to plug in. So I'll just use generic amounts, but you'll get the concept here. First, I looked at what we spent on the kids each month, and that included everything. Sports equipment, clothes, sneakers, toys, games, subscriptions, apps, phones, computers, iPads, monitors, headphones, entertainment, anything else I could think of that the kids basically threw money at, I should say. It was far more than I thought it would be, which is why I kind of got depressed. But for round numbers, let's just say the total for both of them came to about $34,000 a year. You think that's way high, or do you think that's way low? Do you have a grasp on what you spend on your kids each year? Anyway, that means we were spending about $17,000 on each of our kids. So here's what I did. I created a PowerPoint presentation. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I'm that guy. Sir Dorkowitz made a PowerPoint for his kids. Super exciting dad. Now, here's what I presented to them. 1, I said, how much do you guys love coming to mom and dad to ask permission to buy things? And their response, we hate it. My response, so do we, which is why we're putting an end to that today. And their faces got a little bit pale. Then I told them, don't get bummed out. Instead, mom and dad are about to give you 100% of buying power. That means you will never have to ask us for permission again. Their response, that makes no sense. We don't make any money. We don't have jobs. My response, aha, more great news. Starting tomorrow, both of you have excellent jobs and you will be getting paid an excellent salary too. Their faces turned a bit to excitement for sure, except for a little bit of worry in each of their mind about what that job part meant. So my wife and I had already put our heads together and we made a reasonably sized list for each of the kids of what we wanted them to do around the house to help. It doesn't really matter what was on our list. You can make your own list, right? You can mow the lawn, do the laundry, dishes, vacuuming, homework, whatever the heck you guys want. They're your kids, make your own list. So I showed them their individual lists side by side on the screen, and they immediately agreed that this was a reasonable and doable list of items. Then I asked them, how much do you think would be a reasonable salary for all that if I paid you once a month, right? Their response. So my daughter, more conservative, she's like, maybe $100. And my son, in his usual self, said, make it $200, Dad. My response was, then you're really going to love this part. I'm going to pay each of you $1,000 a month. And their faces like went in the shock. And my wife, who was sitting behind them, also went in the shock. She started shaking her head and like waving her hands and saying, what the heck are you doing? Now, if you're paying attention to the math here, $1,000 a month times 2 kids equals $24,000 a year. Seems like a heck of a lot, but I just told you I was already paying $34,000 a year for both of them. Bigger kids start asking for bigger things, so I was worried it would climb higher over time. But at this moment, I was already going to save $10,000 a year, and that's the kind of math that I like to do. Okay, back to the story. It was here, right at this very moment, that I knew I had put the right presentation together, and my hard work was about to pay off. My daughter said, Dad, you're crazy. That is so much money. And she pointed right over at her brother and she said, he's going to spend all his money every month. Now, my son said, and he leaned right in and he said, no way. That's my money. I'm not spending a dime of it. Now, what I remember from that night was the look on my wife's face when he said that moment. When he said that, she looked right at me with a face that said, well, you crazy SOB, you might just have something here. Now, his comment was proof of something I had struggled to get them to understand for years, the value of money. When it was mom or dad's money, it was just a number, right? They just had to be extra nice that time for the ask. But when it became his money, and this is what he uses now to buy things that are important to him, then it had a whole different value. So this 15-minute presentation connected the dots for them, and it truly changed the perspective for both of them that night. So, how did I go about executing this new plan? It really wasn't that hard at all. They got paid on the first of every month. To get paid, they had to list their responsibilities out and show that they did them. They had to track them each month, and they had to have mom and dad sign off on it before they could get paid. And I set up their own accounts, and I would simply transfer $1,000 into each of their accounts. They also had to track their expenses, though, each month. So I created spreadsheets for them. Pretty simple to do. Most of their items were small things that went through our Amazon account or a simple credit card purchase. They were easy to total at the end of the month. Now, that number went up against their $1,000, though. So if they spent $500 on stuff that month, I only deposited the remaining $500 into their account. Now, this resulted in them actually saving large chunks of what I deposited for them. They also had access to see their accounts and could watch them grow and sometimes shrink if they had a big ticket item. But ultimately, when they each went on to college, those accounts had decent balances in there, which really proved to be super helpful. So fast forward now, number of years later, my kids are almost out of college. But if I could rewind the clock, the one thing I would change is that I would have done this with them at a much younger age. Maybe it wouldn't have been as effective, but we would have got some tracks laid, right? So it shifted their perspective. It helped build responsibility and accountability. And as I mentioned earlier, do you have your own success story about how you taught your own kids about the value of money? We would absolutely love to hear it. This is just one success story. So drop a comment and tell us about yours. And thanks for watching, and I hope this was helpful. Hopefully another building block of knowledge to make your house as strong as our house. See you next time.